Okay, I think I might have an answer why antinatalism is wrong, where its flaw is. I think I've seen it, at least from an argument that's been made in another video. Okay, the problem is that I think the real truth about life is that life is what you make it. And if the argument isn't about your life that you're surviving now, but the fact that it's wrong to ever bring in a new life from the world or to the world, is that you're making a subjective value call. In other words, all life is a truism because you're born, you live, you die, you struggle to survive. Some people do quite well, some people don't do well at all. The mother who has children upon children in an African slum is, we could say, yes, that's a very bad thing because there's a very low quality of life. And we can all pretty much agree, except for maybe that mother. What is it to her? But yet, us, who go through the modern problems of an industrialized world, just shrug off our problems as non-important. Or if we don't, we make a subjective call, because choosing to say this is or isn't bad is a subjective call, because life is a truism. Everyone goes through the ultimate pain of death. So it's like, what's the point of saying living, is suffering because, and it's not right, because everything always ends in non-existence, unless you're religious. But I'm just talking straight, basically to the atheist. Life, at least if you believe in spiritual things, at least material life. I want to avoid the spiritual question because I don't think it really matters in a material sense. It might to you, but I just don't believe in it. So I'm going to go on that premise. And the point is that when you're having children, since it's always going to be a subjective value call, it means that, like saying that you shouldn't eat animals because it's wrong and the vegetarian's always right, could always be right. And to a lot more extent, I accept that because I've had pets that weren't dogs and cats, but people eat dogs and cats. There's some very horrible videos. Oh, come on, really, moth? Okay, Does the moth have a right to live, or do we swat it? That's just as important. Thank you, moth. It's the point is that it's subjective. Some people would never agree with swatting a moth. Other people would eat a cat. Other people would have children in slums. We may not agree, but since life is a truism, it's all subjective. Now, we can definitely agree that we live in an industrial, modern world that's surviving because it's carrying a lot of people as resources. So we can talk about increasing the quality of life by decreasing the amount of life, but we're still not talking about an actual extinction. Because what does it matter if we're extinct or not? Because we won't be here to see the animals suffering. Should we destroy the planet because there's life? Does that make any sense? Should we just start killing everything because it's not fair to them and they don't have the right, or they don't have the ability to make the informed choice that they shouldn't propagate? Animals shouldn't propagate? We definitely don't believe in animal abuse. So that's another thing about the vegetarian choice. It's not fair for animals to live or propagate because they don't know they're being selfish. You see? It's a value call. So it is right to have children and propagate your life. It may not exactly be very moral in our modern day, but then again, who's going to choose who does and who doesn't? Then you get in from a truism or an ultimatum or an ultimate fact, since it's been disproven and it's subjective, to a piecemeal action, and then that's a judgment call because eventually it'll have to be, and then because somebody will have to carry on stopping the carrying on, and then you get into postnatalism as an act of policy or a way that it's carried through to its end, which would be very hard. I've mentioned that before. And therefore, it becomes eugenics. So, because ultimately, life is a subjective experience. Now, that's the reason why the postnatalism argument and the vegetarian argument, although I do believe in universal animal veterinary care and animal rights and a lot of things that make things quality of life, just like I do for people, like universal health care and all that, in that, I believe in that, but ultimately, that's where the postnatal argument falls apart. Completely falls apart. Because it's only a truism, and as a truism, it's a subjective value call. Yeah, I think so. Because it just doesn't make a sense, because it's not an absolute. It's always going to be subjective. That's why antinatalism, just like the veterinary, the vegetarian thing, vegetarian thing of not eating meat is also wrong. I think if we treated animals accurately, we would have the right to eat meat, because death is always death. And to not choose to bring something into the world is just a subjective call that isn't really the truism that makes it a moral imperative. Yeah. Life is selfish, life is cruel, life is mean, life is short. But it doesn't mean we can't get something out of it. When you're about to be hit by a bus, or you're falling off a cliff, or you're dying of a heart attack, or you're going blind and you're in an alley because someone in the hospital pushed you out of a freaking taxi, or a taxi took you around the corner and dumped you off into a freaking street, as horrible as that is, who's to say when you were 20 years earlier, when you were laughing or sitting there with friends, that wasn't a valuable experience? It's just how you perceive it. The glass half empty, the glass half full. Who says any of those people in senior homes don't want to live? I think it's horrible what happens in senior homes. I don't think it should be like that at all. But there is a practicality to it. Now, if we could say, life is worth surviving, but it shouldn't be the right, have children for the right of suffering because of suffering, well, then we could also say people shouldn't be allowed to get too old or infirmed, or sounds like eugenics again. That's not good. You see, it's because it becomes a subjective value call again. That's why eugenics and antinatalism fails. Because antinatalism is eugenics. Because it's always going to be a value call. I think I made my point. Yeah, let's hear about how it isn't. Okay. Bye.